now we come to our final presentation, and this is from Lisa Karstens. Lisa is from Flensburg in Germany. She arrived in Australia 2 years ago, and since May 2019, she's been the Client Liaison Officer at TTHA. Her background includes doing a bachelor's degree in mediation studies and a master's degree in health promotion and prevention. She worked for about 2 years in occupational health promotion before moving to Australia. And before that, she worked almost 10 years as a nursing assistant in a hospital. As well, she had another job being a sales promoter for a newspaper agency. So she's got marketing skills too. So Lisa, over to you.
Thank you so much, Ursula. Let's get started. Welcome everyone from my end. I'm the Client Liaison Officer at Tabulum Templer Homes. So I'm the first point of contact pretty much for everyone who's inquiring about our retirement village or residential aged care. And that's why I actually know how important it is to be prepared, because I would say probably about 90% of my clients are not prepared. And on the time when they come in, it's usually quite urgent, and then they have to deal with everything at once in a time that is really emotional and quite stressful. So it's really important to be prepared, and that's why I'm really happy that the Templar Society and Ursula are organizing this to make sure we can get some important information across. I want to talk about retirement living, but just briefly, and then I want to focus more on residential aged care, just because, there's more detail, more things to be prepared about and to think about. First of all, you obviously have to ask yourself, what kind of support do I actually need? So is it enough that I stay at the home where I'm currently living and I'm just getting home care support? And if that's enough, that's great, and definitely go for it. But you might live in a 2-story house and you have a lot of steps and stairs. It's not really age friendly, and you realize the house is too big, you can't really maintain it anymore. And it's not quite time to go into residential aged care, but I definitely can't remain in my current house. And then one option for you is to consider retirement living. So to move into a retirement village where you move into a community. So it's also about not being socially isolated. It's about downsizing. So usually you would move into a unit that's a bit smaller than where you're currently living, depending on where you're coming from, obviously. But just to make it easier to maintain that, you get support with maintenance, but you keep your independence. So it's really about still being 100% independent. And that's important to understand. Some people do have wrong expectations when moving into a retirement village. It's not serviced apartments, so it doesn't come with any care support. But obviously, if you move into a retirement village and you need more support, you can always get support from a home care package. And Nick has just explained all that. So it's all on a needs basis. And then obviously, you might realize retirement living doesn't give me the right support. I'm not 100% independent anymore, and a home care package might not give me the right support. So I need to go into residential aged care, and that would be the next step, where you have still independence as much as you can. So part of the aged care rights is to keep your independence and to be supported in that, but you have 24/7 full care, and you have short and long-term options. And most facilities do offer aging in place, not all of them, but a lot of them, like Tabulum Templer Homes. Going back to retirement living, you usually have different options, and the option you will find at pretty much every retirement village is that you can buy a unit. But buying a unit does not really mean that you will own the unit. It's more like buying into the village, but the title will remain with the provider. And then you have different pricing options. Have a look into the regulations for the different villages where you're going to, because villages might have a bit of different fees. And have different pricing. In general, you have an ingoing contribution, so you pay yourself into a village, and that might be $500,000. And it's called refundable, but keep in mind that usually it's not 100% refundable, but the longer you live in a retirement village, the less money you would get back when you move out, because there is something like a deferred management fee. So there is a certain percentage in most villages that will be taken just to maintain the village and to keep the retirement village running pretty much. So just be prepared that there might be fees that will be taken off that contribution that you're paying. There might be also departure fees or exit fees to reinstate the unit, to get it back to the initial state when you move out. So just get in touch with the different villages and get more information about that, because it is quite individual. The percentage that will be taken is individual, and it's important to look into that and ask about that. You will usually have services fees on a monthly basis that cover things like maintenance, and then you might have additional costs like electricity or phone, things like that. A second option might be that you can rent a unit. So at Tabulum Templer Homes, we have started offering a few units for rent as well, just because we get more inquiries for rental, and we do understand that not everybody is able to buy him or herself into a retirement village. And that's a standard rental agreement, and you would pay your rent on a monthly basis and then have additional costs, again, like electricity. So that's pretty much like renting an apartment or a unit anywhere else. And that already leads us to residential aged care. So we have a lot of people moving into the retirement village to be already a bit closer to residential aged care, make the transition easier when the time comes. We also have couples moving into the retirement village where maybe the wife is going into the village and the husband needs to go into residential aged care, and they just want to be close to each other. So there are different reasons why you would do one or the other. In general, permanent care means obviously long-term care in a nursing home. You would start permanent care based on increased care needs that can't be met at home. This has changed in the last years with having more home care options and having better home care services available, and the government is really supporting that a lot. People can stay at home much longer as they could maybe 10 years ago. That means people are coming into residential aged care at a quite late stage, sometimes entering care in a stage where there's no mental capacity to make good decisions or make decisions for yourself. And that's again why it's so important to prepare while you still have capacity, while you still have a voice and you can still make decisions. So just get prepared early and make sure that your family is aware that if you have to go into care, and nobody wants to, but we just have to be prepared. If we have to go into care, that your family knows, where do I actually want to go? What are my preferences? What's important for me? Have that conversation. And if you're joining today to support your loved one because you're afraid that your mum or dad or whoever needs to go into care, then go to them and have an open conversation and ask what is important to you. While it's still possible to ask that question. Another reason to come into care might be that you would be okay staying at home with a home care package, but you haven't started the process early enough. So you're now waiting, you're sitting on your waiting period, as Nick just said, and you're not getting your funding on time. So while waiting on the package, your care needs increase that much that you have to go into residential care because your care needs can't be met at home. If you would have started organizing a home care package earlier and just started on a level 1 on an early stage, you might have been able to stay at home and would have got the right funding and the right time. And that's again why it's so important to get the process starting as soon as possible. Be prepared to make sure you can stay at home as long as you can, but also be realistic about your care needs. And when you realize it's not safe anymore at home, do the step and come into residential care. Also, one thing I'd like to add is obviously we are having more residents with cognitive challenges, cognitive impairment coming into the home. For residents who are living with dementia, it's usually easier to come in at an earlier stage where they are still able to understand the situation, where those residents are still able to get settled and to get used to the new environment, and then can slowly decrease at the home, but are already comfortable, because it's much more complicated to get settled and to feel comfortable in a very strange environment when you have already advanced dementia. So especially for residents living with dementia, if you have a cognitive impairment, it's important to consider going into care rather early than late, just to make sure that you're comfortable and safe down the track. And one thing that people don't keep in mind is that permanent care can be cancelled. So it's not necessarily permanent, there's always a way out. So if you don't like the facility and you like to change, you can. The alternative is respite care, that's short-term care, and you might have different reasons why you want to use this service. One of the reasons is carer support. And I do have a lot of families in front of me who feel guilty when they admit that it's really more about them. And I always try to explain that I see so many carers who have a lot of stress and who suffer from their carer role, and they need to have a break every now and then. And if they don't have their breaks, they can't be a good carer. So taking this break and putting the person you're caring for into respite care gives you a bit of a break and stress relief to make sure that you can look after your loved one after this break even better, and to make sure everyone is safe and healthy and in a good capacity to look after each other. So it's important as a carer, obviously, to focus not only on the person that you're caring for. Another reason to do respite might be recovery after hospital stay. It might be just a trial, so just see how it is to go into care. And we have a few residents coming into respite care before transitioning into permanent. So they're not going home after respite, but stay with us and decide to go permanent straight away. Continuing with respite care, you have different options to fund that. So you still need a MyHK approval, same as for home care if you want government funding. The government subsidizes 63 days per financial year. That's the maximum, and you can get low or high care approval. If you have a low care respite approval, but your care needs change over time, and on the day when you have to come into respite care, you might have high care needs, you need to be prepared that a facility might turn around and say you have to go back to MyHK and get that updated, because we can't meet your care needs with a low care approval. So just keep that in mind, check what kind of approval you have, and if you realize that you have changed quite a lot, just get in touch with MyHK again and see if you can get upgraded and just get an update on your approval. One option that you have, if you don't want to or can't fund the respite stay out of pocket, then you can get in touch with carer support programs who are supporting on the carer. So this is not about the resident, this is again about carer stress, and they usually fund, for example, 2 weeks of respite and support with the fees. Another option is private respite care. You do not need MyHK approval because the government is obviously not funding this. You come in on a private basis, means you have higher out-of-pocket cost because you're not getting any subsidies from the government. And you have the option with some home care provider like Accent Home Care to have your private respite stay funded through your home care package if you have enough funds in the package. You can't fund government supported respite through a home care package because it's double dipping. So you would take money from the government twice, and the government doesn't like that. So if you want to fund it through the home care package, you need to come in as a private respite. You have out-of-pocket fees. You have the basic daily care fee that Erica was mentioning earlier. You usually have a booking or administration fee. At TTHA, we waive that for Templer member and for Accent Home Care clients, as well as for residents who are living in the retirement village. So in those cases, you don't have to pay that. Some facilities have additional services fees. Erica was mentioning that as well. At TTHA, we just have it in the new building, but not in the other areas. And then you might have any extra services that you can pay for, like hairdresser or newspaper. Medication is usually an extra cost as well, but that's more on an as needed basis. Check with your provider what the minimum stay is. At TTHA, you need to stay at least for 14 days. That is simply because there's quite an effort behind every admission. So things you probably wouldn't see. A lot of work is happening in the background, and it's just that's why we need to have at least a minimum stay of 14 days to make sure that all the work that's put in is actually worth it. You usually have a maximum stay. So as I said, government is funding 63 days per financial year. You don't have to take those at once. You can come for 2 weeks, and then at another time of the year, you come back for maybe 4 weeks. Keep in mind that facilities might not give you your full 63 days in a row. I do have sometimes inquiries where people say, I want to go on permanent care, but I will start with my 63 days of respite because I'm entitled to, and then I want to go permanent. What you have to keep in mind is that we as a facility are actually having a maximum number of days that we can give away as well. And as soon as that runs out, we're not able to provide respite anymore, at least not able to provide government-funded respite. That means we really want to support those who need respite, like the short-term stay and go back home because of carer stress or because they just need a break. If everyone who's going permanent would start off with respite and use the 63 days, then we're not able to support those who really need respite. And that's why it's important to just keep that in mind and just have that conversation with us or any other provider. And then obviously be prepared that not all facilities offer respite and not all facilities have respite beds available. And sometimes it can be difficult to try to book in half a year in advance because facilities are not always able to say what's happening in 6 months. Permanent care, you need your MyHK approval. So it's really important to have that in place to get government support. Possible fees and contributions, because as you have seen in the beginning when Erica was talking about the fees, it's highly individual, and I really recommend to seek advice if you're not sure, and especially if it's a bit of a tricky situation, because it takes a lot of stress off you if you don't have to deal with that yourself. And keep in mind that your funding in your home care package will actually go back to the government on the day where you enter permanent care. So have a look how much money still is in the package and if there's anything you'd like to organize through the package before going into permanent care. Prepare for care. Paperwork. Have your documents ready. So we do highly recommend to have a will just to make sure that things are happening the way that you wanted to. Power of attorney, Erica did address that. Too often, unfortunately, we do have people coming in who do not have power of attorney set up and said, oh yeah, we were always talking about it, but we've never set it up. And then mom or dad is living with dementia. It's so severe. There is a formal diagnosis, so they're not in the capacity to make this decision anymore. And then the family has to go to VCAT and go through this painful process that Erica has addressed. So it's highly recommended to get that done. It's not about losing your voice. In aged care, everything is about choice and resident choice, and we will always listen to the resident. And this is really just an insurance and just about having someone who can make medical decisions for you and help with your finances when you're not longer able to do that. Advanced Care Directive is just as important. So it's important to have an end-of-life plan. We want to know if you are for resuscitation or not. We want to know if you have certain values or preferences for your last days in life to make sure that we can use support as good as we can and act in your best interest. Again, if you don't have that and you might start living with dementia, you have a formal diagnosis, you're legally not allowed to set it up anymore. There's an alternative form that's called a values and preferences form, and that can be filled in, for example, by the family, someone who knows you well and can put in your values and preferences. You need to have the MyHK referral, so you will get a code from MyHK that looks similar to what I've put in there just as an example. You get one code for home care, you get one code for respite, you get a different code for permanent care, and that's in the end what the provider needs. And organize a representative for MyHK, because MyHK does not even talk to your power of attorney. So make sure you have someone who can speak on your behalf with them when you're not longer able to do that. Income and asset assessment, that's again has something to do with the fees. So get in touch with Centrelink, get help from a financial advisor like Prime Care. And also organize a nominee for Centrelink. So have someone in place who can speak on your behalf with Centrelink. And know your fees, understand if you're supported, partially supported or non-supported. And if you're not sure, and if it's too much, speak to a financial advisor, because this is really, really important for the provider to know where you're at, to be able to give you the best advice, but also for you to just have peace of mind and to understand what costs are you looking at. Find the right place. Erica has mentioned that. Start researching. You have different preferences. For some, it's important where the location is. For some, it's more important what kind of extra services facilities offer or cultural background. So look into that. Start and do your research today. Tour facilities, get in touch with facilities. So if you would get in touch with us, then I would make an appointment with you. I would invite you and you get your individual tour. So it's not that you have a group of people, but it's just for you. And we would walk around the facility and you can get a feel of the facility. So it's really important to actually come in and not just look at photos, because it makes such a difference. And then sign up for the wait list. And it doesn't hurt to sign up for wait lists at different facilities, because again, as Erica has said, your preference might not have vacancies when the time comes. So it doesn't hurt to have a backup plan. And to sign up for a waitlist should be free of charge, and you shouldn't commit to anything. It's really just to have your name on the list, and when the time comes that you have a bit higher priority to get the next available room. And then, as Nick has said, obviously our residents in the retirement village, members of the Temple Society Australia, as well as the clients from Exit Home Care always have priority. Prep the admission. So decide on a room when you know it's time to go in. Fill in any application paperwork. You might be able to fill in admission paperwork. Aged care is highly regulated, so we have a lot of consent forms, and it is a bit of paperwork, but you're never alone with that, and you get all the support. Ideally, organize a health summary from your current GP and any other relevant information. The more you give us, the better we can look after you. Have a medication list ready. And in today's days, we have to say no current COVID restrictions. So ask how a facility has dealt with the COVID pandemic, if they had any cases. As Nick has said, luckily we didn't have any cases at all. Ask if you need a COVID test before you come in. Ask about visiting restrictions. Ask how activities are currently going ahead. Ask all those questions to be prepared and to know what you're looking at if COVID is something that worries you. And obviously in the past year, it was the major topic in aged care, because the media has not put us in the best corner with that. So just have an open conversation to the providers, and then choose your GP. So most facilities have their own GPs on site, and they come and visit on a more regular basis. They're in good communication with nursing staff, what's obviously really important. If you'd like to keep your own GP, it's always your choice. It's just then important to have a chat to your GP and find out if he or she is willing to come out to the nursing home and support you while you're in permanent or respite care. Moving in. What should or can I actually bring into a home? So obviously it always depends a bit on the room that you have and room size, but in general, bring in some clothes. That would be great. For respite care, you can think about bringing enough in for the whole stay, but we can do the washing, so we can look after that as well. Bring in medication, any medication you still have at home, and then we can set you up with our pharmacy. Bring in your own bedding. We can obviously support with sheets and pillows and everything, but I always recommend bring in your own, because you sleep so much better on your own. Furniture, if you have the space in your room, bring in little pieces of furniture, decoration, plants, pictures. Set the room up in a way that you feel like it's now has my personality. I walk in and I know this is my room. That's really, really important and makes quite a difference. Bring in a TV or a phone. If the room doesn't have that, and if you used to work on a computer, bring that in, and definitely bring in any mobility aids. If you're using a walker or wheelchair, please bring that with you. And I didn't want to make a list to say what can't I bring in. It's more a matter of when should we have a conversation. And part of that is scooter and electric wheelchairs. So you might, if you're using that, you might need to have a risk assessment if you want to use it in the home, and ask about storage options, because usually you would need to keep it in your room. So just have a conversation about that. Other electronic devices like an electronic kettle, a microwave, or fridge, ask if you can have it. Especially things like kettle and microwave, you might need a risk assessment. And you might think it's silly, because I have used a microwave for the past 60 years. But we are highly regulated, obviously, by the government. We need to follow certain regulations. We need to cover our bags. It's about insurance. So we need to have in writing that you are actually safe to use a microwave. So that's things that need to be organized and set up, just in case you burn down the facility. Pets. If you want to bring in a pet, ask if that's possible, because not all facilities offer that. Same if you just have family who wants to visit with the family dog, just have a chat to the provider. And at Tabulum and Templer Homes, we're very pet friendly, so we always love to see dogs and cats around. And any valuables, just have a chat and see how you can store those, because we usually don't recommend to bring anything in that's too much of a value. But obviously, if it's something that's really important to you and makes you feel comfortable, you should be able to bring it in, but you just have to be aware about storage options. Daily life in aged care, well, obviously you get full care support accordingly to your care needs. And as I said before, because of really good home care services that are currently in place, residents are coming in at a later stage. So we do have a lot of residents living with dementia, have maybe challenging behaviors, and that's the reason why they come in. We have more residents coming in at a very late stage, maybe being already palliative. So we're just doing end of life care, comfort care, and support in the last few weeks or month. But at the same time, we still have new residents coming in who are quite independent. We have a resident who's still driving. So you have all these different levels, and people make very different decisions why they come into care. Sometimes it's a social decision, and based on being socially isolated at home and having a bit of hiccups here and there, and instead of ordering or putting home care in place, they just decide, I'm ready to do the next step and just move into care and don't have to worry about anything. Obviously, you get all the meals, breakfast, morning tea, lunch, afternoon tea, dinner, supper, with all kind of dietary requirements, whatever you need. A facility should be able to cater for that. We're having more vegans and gluten-free and all that. So that's all possible. And you always choose where you'd like to dine. Some people prefer their own company. That's fine. Stay in your room. Others are out there and want to be in the dining room with everyone else. Perfect. Go out there, mingle, be social. So it's really about choice again. Daily activities. Most facilities like Tabulum and Templer Homes offer one-on-one activities, offer group activities and bus outings. Ask about those things. Ask what's currently on. Again, ask what happened during COVID, just to have an idea what might happen worst case, if there should be any other outbreaks. Get a feel about the daily activities and see if there's anything that you would like. At Tabulum and Templer Homes, we are open for suggestions. We always love residents coming out and saying, oh, I used to do this, I used to do that, I can't see that on the activities list. Great. We get the activity coordinator on it, and he's usually happy to tailor activities to your liking. And then obviously you can have visits from loved ones. You can go on outings, and the government gives you 52 days of social leave per financial year. So because the government is paying a lot of money for you every day, they have restricted that. It's 52 days social leave per year. I've never had anyone who was using all those, so it's usually enough. Keep just in mind that this is just for permanent care. If you're on respite care, you actually have to stay at the facility. If you would be discharged into hospital, or if you would decide to go home and sleep at home for a night, then we have to discharge you. And it's a quite emotional and it's quite a stressful topic, and that's usually easier to discuss over a cup of coffee. So another activity is obviously just going into a cafe, and our residents at Tabulum and Templer Homes can now go into the Changing Seasons Cafe, that we over a cup of coffee or come in and have a lunch and just also get a feel for the place. So if you're joining today just for your loved ones to get information, get them out in the cafe, get them a bit closer to the facility, and maybe have a look at reception area, come to the admin area, say hi to Nick and myself. We're sitting there, pop your head in and have a conversation, have a chat to us. No commitments, and just to get started. Nick and I are around Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, so normal business hours. Ring us up if you'd like to do a tour, if you'd like to have a chat about your individual situation and get more support. Don't hesitate to reach out. That's what we're there for, and we know challenging situations, and we're happy to support with that. And saying that, I want to thank you for joining, for seeing how important this topic is, how important it is to be prepared. And thanks again to Ursula and the Templar Society for taking this really important topic on board and talking about this. Thank you.